So much happened, I'm not even sure what to freak out about first.
How you get so big that you hold of this kind?
Hello, and welcome into this spoiler review for Star Wars The Mandalorian Chapter 8. This is the Season 1 finale of Star Wars The Mandalorian, and there are going to be spoilers beyond this point, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, you have been warned. With that, I will get the first, most pressing thing out of the way. Yes, I am fine. No, I did not break my television when Yodel was hit several times. I almost did, but it was mostly the knowledge that something bad was going to befall the stormtroopers that kept me going. I was kind of hoping that Yodel was going to force choke them, as was set up last week, but no, I suppose IG-11 wrecking them on their own speeder bikes was a perfectly fine way to also get justice for that moment. But yeah, no, things are okay, and now that my son is okay, it's all gonna be fine. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the rest of the episode. The title of this episode is Redemption, and just Redemption. There is no article, there is no The Redemption, which is kind of interesting. So, the fourth episode of the series, Sanctuary, which was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, also does not have the article at the beginning, so it seems to be like an every 4 episode thing. I'm not sure that's really relevant, but it's kind of odd that it would follow that pattern. Every other episode of the show has a subtitle with "the" in front of the title. The child, the sin, the reckoning, so on and so forth. Except for the first episode, which does not have a subtitle, but one could conceivably refer to that episode as The Mandalorian, so it would still kind of work. In the grand scheme of things, I don't know what this bit of trivia does for anyone. I found it interesting. Now, back to that first scene. That first scene was a very odd bit of humor compared to the rest of the show. Besides the whole hitting my son thing, I thought it was there was so much going on in the scene that I liked. I just felt like it went on a little bit too much. I thought it was funny. I like seeing stormtroopers doing what stormtroopers do. I like seeing the banter. I like seeing the, well, Moff Gideon just killed a guy for interrupting him, so I'm not going to interrupt him. That whole thing was kind of funny. I liked them shooting at the stuff and, doing target practice and seeing that either their aim is that bad or maybe it's, the blasters are bad. There was a lot going on in there I liked this ongoing thing of no one knows what Yodel is. They're is it a pet? Does he want to eat it? That kind of thing. Really, at the end of the day, I didn't want to laugh because they were hitting Yodel. That wasn't funny. And so it was just part of me really wants to laugh at the scene and part of me wants to be really angry, and I was just very emotionally confused. That could just be a me problem. To add to the emotional confusion, one of those stormtroopers was 100% Jason Sudeikis, which I then got confirmed to me by the credits, but I 100% recognized because I am a big fan of Jason Sudeikis' voice, and I will leave it at that. So I was just very emotionally confused in that whole scene because there were just a lot of things going a lot of different ways that I wasn't really comfortable with them going all of those different ways. But all of that was just me having an existential crisis, that whole opening scene. But then IG-11 wrecks them, and that kind of left the dangling question of last week, because I think it was intentional last week, when the stormtrooper, shoots down Quill, to leave you to wonder, was it the stormtrooper or was IG-11? Most people were correct that IG-11 was going to be properly rehabilitated. I was not convinced, per se. I'm not surprised either. I think it was one of those, I was kind of waiting this week to see which one it was going to be, and we found out really quickly at the beginning of the episode. I think him being described as a nurse droid was pretty funny, too. Just because it's just an IG-11 assassin unit being referred to in that way was amusing. And like I said, just other little things. It establishes that Gideon is a very intense Moff, not that we couldn't figure out that already. And I also just liked Yodel biting the guy's finger. But that takes us into the episode itself. Our heroes are still held up inside the old guild headquarters, and presumably the reason why they're not being shot is Gideon doesn't know that the child was in custody, and now is probably unaware that the child is no longer in custody, and he doesn't want to kill these guys until he knows where the child is. At the very least, the child could be close. The child could conceivably be in the building, even though he wasn't really in the pod. Gideon would already know that. But either way, he doesn't want them dead, because he certainly could have them dead in any other way. So they're held up, and you at this point you hear that Gideon really knows a lot about all of them. We hear that Grief Karga is a former disgraced magistrate, so he went from being like in charge of things politically and bureaucratically to now running this guild. We learn that Kara is from Alderaan, which explains why she hates the Imperials so much. And now we know the Mandalorian's name. His name is Din. This was actually spoiled a while back. I didn't look at the name myself, so I didn't know it until this episode. But I think a ways back, if I remember correctly, Pedro Pascal did an interview and said what his character's name was because he didn't realize that it would be a big deal. And the only reason why his name would be a big deal is if he was really gonna be Boba Fett, or like be Jaster Mareel and be a name that Legends fans would recognize. But really it was just a name they made up for the show that, as far as I'm aware of, doesn't connect to anything else. But that was kind of funny. But we now get to know about him, and this is a big clue on who Gideon is. See, the only person who could possibly know Mando's real name is the guy who used to be the ISB officer on the planet of Mandalore. So now we know that there is at least some sort of personal connection going on between the two characters, because this is the guy who used to be in charge of Mandalore before whatever this Mandalorian purge is that we keep hearing about. We finally get the full flashback to Mando's days as a child, when he lost his parents. They are on a planet that's under a Clone Wars attack. I'm really curious what's going on here. People who are a little bit more tapped into lore than I am might know better than I, but it's clearly a battle during the Clone Wars. You can see droids running around. There are suspiciously no clone troopers going on wherever this battle is. Mando gets put into a storage box that could have easily fit his whole family, but only he goes in it for some reason. I'm just not going to think too hard about it. I'm sure there's a reason. But at the last second, a super battle droid shows up, and he is saved by a Mandalorian. This is kind of what I suspected he was going to be saved by. But the curious part about this is the logo, the insignia on the fellow that saves him and several others in the area is Death Watch. So if you're familiar with Star Wars The Clone Wars, Death Watch is made up of the Vizsla clan. It is the bad guys of Star Wars The Clone Wars. It is a very militaristic, nasty element side that tried to team up with Count Dooku, which again makes them fighting droids curious. Is it after the episodes where the Mandalorians would have tried to team up with Count Dooku? Is it before that deal would have ever been brought around? I don't necessarily know. But it is showing there's a very interesting political history going on with them in the past. The end of the flashback is Mando flying off with a fellow with a jetpack. And so there's two iconography things going on in this scene. The second one we don't know until we get to the end of the episode, but the first one is the Mandalorian who reaches out to young Mando in the storage thing, reaches out to him similar to when the Mando kind of reached his hand out for young Baby Yoda to grab when they first met. And then later, of course, he's flying away on the jetpack. In the end of the episode, the Mandalorian gets his jetpack and is flying away with Baby Yoda. That plus the armor just referring to the child as a foundling now. It really laid it on thick that there's supposed to be a connection between Yodel and Mando and the way Mando was found by the Mandalorians. And I don't mean that as a complaint. They're just making it very, very clear, something that had kind of been a fan theory, that this is where the emotion of the episodes are going to go. That this was very clear, like, no, this is what's going on. Cut back to our friends who are still in the frying pan, as it were. They're about to get shot down by an E-Web gun. If you have ever played a Star Wars video game, E-Web is that thing that the stormtroopers stand at and shoot at you, and they're very annoying, but then you just go up and slice them with your lightsaber and you don't have to worry about them anymore. So that was just kind of a fun connection, and to see them actually being a little bit more scary than they are sometimes in Star Wars video games. And the other thing we learned is that Gideon is supposed to be dead. He was supposed to be executed for war crimes, which, if that's on the New Republic side, that's pretty intense, because I don't think they did a lot, if any, executions. So I'm kind of wondering where that came from. But basically the idea is he's a really, really bad dude. And also, somehow this really, really bad dude is not dead. So he must have been in custody at one point and gotten away. Again, there's more story there I want to know. I think there's plenty of time for it. I'm not mad that we didn't get it in this episode. I'm just really excited to see answers to a lot of the questions that are still getting posed. It's about now that IG-11 comes in and saves the day. He's riding on the swoop bike with Baby Yoda. I like seeing his compartments turn around, so like he starts getting shot at, and so he just turns his torso, so now Yodel's behind him and he's shooting and fighting. Yodel is smiling and laughing and just taking in the destruction. I'm kind of worried that being around all of this fighting might lead him to be not so much the great Jedi he could be when he gets older. It's kind of a bad influence. But it is fun to see him in these circumstances and kind of taking in everything that's going on. So IG-11 comes in and makes a suitable entrance that distracts a bunch of the troopers so that Mando and Cara can get involved in the fight. Grief's doing his own thing. Mando gets control of the E-Web, and there's this big fight. I really liked how IG-11 was really powerful, really tough. Like, he lives up to the reputation of an IG droid like IG-88, but they don't actually win, right? They get away. Their victory was escaping. So he's really powerful in doing all of this great stuff, but he doesn't just kind of come in and lay waste to the entire courtyard, and I thought it was a good balancing thing for him. Now, Mando gets seriously injured. He's not sure he's going to make it out, and at this point I was kind of wondering, well, is Yodel going to heal him like we saw him do with Grief earlier? But then Yodel does something else that's pretty darn amazing. So first of all, we get a pyro trooper, which seeing a pyro trooper as he was so cool. Clearly they have the firepower where they could have just wrecked the place, but Moff Gideon definitely wants Yodel alive, so he's trying to find a way to just shoo them out. But little does he know that Yodel has some tricks up his sleeve. So Yodel stands and faces down the pyro trooper and uses the Force to push the fire back on the pyro trooper, and the pyro trooper just explodes. It was absolutely phenomenal. And then, like all good little children, after he uses the Force, he has to take a nap, which was so cute. Not only was that an epic moment, like that was the moment of the show that has the closest brought me back to the moment of seeing Yodel for the first time, of just this, oh my gosh, what am I looking at? This is so amazing. But it also sets up Yodel not just healing Mando, because now he's got to take his little nap. So Grief and Cara and Yodel head off into the sewers, and that leaves Mando with IG-11. Mando still doesn't like droids and is still fearful of this droid, but he has seen this droid come in and protect Yodel, and now 11 is not trying to kill him, but instead wants to heal him. So now we have the big moment. We have learned the Mandalorian's name, and now we finally get to see the Mandalorian's face. He talks about how no living being has seen his face since he took up the creed, and IG points out that he is not a living being, and so he is allowed to take the mask off and heal the Mandalorian's head. So we finally got to see his face there for the first time, and now we know that he does actually look like Pedro Pascal. He looks a little worse for wear, but he looks like Pedro Pascal. I liked their exchange too, where he's like, you have a problem with your central processing unit. You mean my brain? He's like, yes, that was a joke. It was meant to put you at ease. Like, the total deadpan humor from 11 really worked throughout the whole episode. Now, if all of this wasn't enough content for you this episode, now we get into the sewers and go to the former hideout of the Mandalorians. Now, we had heard at the end of the third episode that they were going to have to get out of Dodge for helping the Mandalorian. Here we learn that they needed to, and they didn't. We get into the sewers and see that a bunch of them have been killed. Their armor is piled up in the center of the room, and the only one left alive who's there is the armorer. She says she hopes others got away. She doesn't know for sure, but she's kicking back, she's hanging out, she's melting down all the past bits and bobs to presumably gather up the Beskar so it doesn't go to waste, it doesn't just get left there, before she would do whatever she would do after helping with collecting all of the resources. Now, a lot happens here. We finally get confirmation on this idea of a foundling. You know, Mando is somebody who was brought in, he was somebody who was taught, but we also get this in what she's saying about Yodel, that now Yodel has fallen under the Mandalorian's care, that he's in charge of taking care of him. He's way too young to train in being a Mandalorian, and what I like is it's really just that he's the wrong age and he can't do it. Like, it's not that he's not human or something like that. So the idea that, hey, maybe we can get Mandalorian Yodel one day is still out there, and that would be pretty amazing. But she says you have to take care of him or send him back to his people. She is at least somewhat aware of Force powers, though she kind of seems to either not correct Mando or is thinking that Force sensitivity is a species thing and not a people thing, or like a organization thing. Now we have Mandalorian's quest, presumably for season 2. Either return Yodel or take care of Yodel. And I'm really curious what'll happen. Will he figure his people are other Jedi? Will Yodel end up, with Luke Skywalker? Or are we going to go to the home planet of the Yodas? Which I don't think I would emotionally be able to handle. We also find out that Mando has earned his signet, so signet is his particular clan. He gets to found his own clan. I know some people thought foundling was going to be a word for people who found their own clan. I always assumed foundling means somebody you find, much like Baby Yoda. It seems that it can actually be both. When you're a foundling, you are found, but you can also found a new clan, because he gets the Mudhorn clan, and he is a clan of 2 with him and Yodel. I kind of wonder to myself, and I think I know the answer to this question too, is like, what did he do to earn his signet? But I think it's probably that he has been taking care of Yodel. He's been taking care of this foundling, and not just taking someone in and giving him a roof over his head, but protecting him and doing all of this and going out and doing honorary deeds or honorable deeds throughout the galaxy. I think is how that came about, but it was cool to see. And he finally gets the jetpack. So the jetpack is really, really awesome. That was something that was set up in the 3rd episode. They eventually have to leave. She's left alone. Scouting group comes to see her, and she just kicks butt. Like, she's amazing. The Armorer is an amazing character. I really, really hope we get to see her again and spend some more time with her. I would love to see some offshoot material with her, because she's just been fantastic. And that was probably actually my favorite combat scene of the episode, is her little spat, more so than the big battles. Now they move on to the lava river, which was just visually really interesting. They get the boat moving, the droid perks up. You think it's just going to be like a normal astromech, and it's actually like this weird standing droid. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the quirky droid we saw in the Sanctuary as well. And this leads to a very emotional scene where the IG unit does the self-destruct thing that we saw established in the 1st episode, only he's using it to protect Yodel. There are too many troops there to fight, so he deems that Yodel is under protection properly with Mando, and so he then intentionally puts himself in a situation where he would be captured so that he can initiate self-destruct. Now here is where I bring up the title of the episode, Redemption. And it's specifically called Redemption. It doesn't really say whose. I don't think the entire episode is named for 11, but I think 11 can be a part of that. A droid's redemption is a little bit different, because it's not really a choice he's making, per se. It's like literally rewritten programming. It was a good moment to see, especially because I wasn't necessarily ready to trust the droid yet, mostly because I was just choosing to view everything through how the Mando was choosing to view things, rather than look at a bigger picture. But I thought it was a good moment, and I thought it was a good way for them to have a really powerful way to take down a bunch of troopers, again, without making everything seem overly done. And I just like seeing the Mando, like, care about a droid. Like, he's trying to get this droid to not do it, even though he hates droids so much and hates that droid. So it's showing a lot of character growth with him as well. Now you think that they are finally out of the frying pan, but it turns out they are into the fire. Gideon shows up in his TIE fighter, and he's shooting them from above. I love this bit where Grief is thinking exactly what we're all thinking. Like, Yodel should do something. He looks over at Yodel and he's like, do the hand thing! Do the magic hand thing! And Yodel literally just waves at him like, what do you want me to do? It was so cute and so hilarious. And I love how Yodel is still kind of has this, like, gleeful, innocent obliviousness. Like, he can ride into battle and not understand the death and destruction and what's going on, but then other times understand that there's danger and, like, try to use the Force. And how he's still a child. He's still clearly a child and doesn't have a super adult understanding of things. And so he's kind of vacillating between his understanding of what's going on in the moment. And I think it just establishes, like, Yodel is not the end-all answer to absolutely everything in the show, because he's a kid and you can't control him, and you can't make him do things on demand, and it's all going to be dependent on whether or not he feels like he's in danger. I also feel like with Yodel, assuming he's feeling things in the Force, I think the times where he's kind of stepped in, there's been no other option for him to step in, other than the one mischievous point on the ship in the Prison Break episode 2 weeks ago. But even then, that was him actively choosing to be mischievous, and he didn't use the Force then. But I like to think that maybe Yodel didn't think to use the Force here because he knew Mando could handle it. Like, through the Force, he wasn't getting this sense of impeding danger, like he would versus the fire, versus the Mudhorn, as Grief is being poisoned, these kind of things. But nevertheless, here's where we get the payoff for the jetpack. Mando was told that he wouldn't really be able to use it super well until he practiced on it, and that proved to be true. He wasn't very proficient with the jetpack, but it did the job. It got him in the air so he could latch onto the TIE fighter, so he could get on the TIE fighter, so he could blow the TIE fighter up. No one actually thought Gideon was dead in that moment, I'm sure, except for the characters in the show. But here's where it looks like everything's going to be fine and grand. And Grief, again, doing a nostalgic reference, says, you know, we've chased all the scum and villainy away. Now they want to set up shop on the planet again, get Navarro up and running again. Kara's gonna, like, stay with him. She gets a clean slate, so there's no bounty on her head anymore. So that's where they stay. They're gonna be there. Right now, it seems like the group is separating. I don't think they'll stay separate for very long in the second season, but they're kind of gonna be there to set up this planet. Mando and Yodel are going to go off to find Yodel's people. Unfortunately, Quill did pass, as did IG-11, so we got to mourn them a little bit at the end of the episode. They go to blast into space, and we find that Yodel has the Mandalorian necklace. Now, this necklace was given to Kara earlier in the episode to say, like, hey, when you find the Mandalorians, give them this, and they'll know that you were with me, and they'll take care of the little guy. The little guy still has it. So it's just this, again, this like acceptance of Yodel into the Mandalorian culture, and all of that is really, really cute. And then we get to the end of the episode, and live action Darksaber. I was freaking out to see the Darksaber in live action. And it's one of those things, like, if you had done like a top 5 things you were probably going to see in The Mandalorian, like, it would be on the plausible list for me. Like, I didn't not think we were going to see it. It was one of those things where it was so good, I didn't want to hope for it, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want to get my hopes up for the Darksaber, because it not being in there would let me down so much. So then it was there, and I wasn't expecting it, and it was so great to see it there on the screen. So now that we've broken down the episode a little bit, I'll do some kind of final thoughts. We will be doing a stream on this somewhere in the new year to talk about the season as a whole, which I am excited to do. But for now, I guess it's just some kind of final thoughts. I actually really got used to the episode length when I got, you know, kind of let down that they weren't hour long. That was really on me. We were never told it was going to be another episode length. I thought every episode kind of had the story it needed to tell within it. I thought that was done really well. I like the tonal differences. I like how we started with a story arc, and then we had individual episodes, and then we ended with a story arc. I do hope we get more episodes next season, something closer to 10 or 11 even, I would go for. But, you know, at the end of the day, it did its job. What we had was really good. It told a really good story. It set up a lot of things and answered a lot of really pertinent questions. I like that we have his name and his face now at the end of the season, so it doesn't become this big, long, drawn-out thing for seasons. But I do like that we had to kind of work and earn to get there. I don't know, I think it's really well done. I would not have expected to like the show as much as I did. A lot of that is, of course, because of Baby Yoda. I can't deny that, but I'm really excited to see where this show could go. That it is such a bounty hunting show. Like, it is a show about a bounty hunter. It is a show about a Mandalorian. You have all this deep cut Mandalorian stuff, all of the this is the way, and this is how you do things as a foundling, and you wear your helmet after you take it. Like, it has all this really in-depth stuff about Mandalorian culture. You get to see him go on bounty hunting things, and you get to know bounty hunting culture, but that it still can tap into something larger in the Star Wars universe too, that it can do all of this with the time it has, with this amazing cast, with these amazing stories. My mind has been blown by how much I've liked this show. But I think I'm going to leave it there for now. Like I said, in the new year, we'll do a kind of discussing the season as a whole kind of stream somewhere in our streamcast schedule. But for now, please leave me a comment letting me know what you thought. Give me some of your best Season 2 theories. If you're not already, please follow us on all of the socials. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun!